let's invite Schwa, because he's right around the corner. And Schwa, you can come join us for some Philly cheesesteaks. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Sounds like a fun afternoon.
Welcome, everyone. We're starting in 7 minutes. It's good to see you, Dr. Patty Ann. We're always delighted when the guest is here early. So welcome, Dr. Patty Ann.
Thank you. If I'm too early, I'll log out and come back in.
No, you're good. You're good. You stay right where you are. The one I worry about is Dean Jackson. He usually gets here a minute or two early.
Good for the suspense.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Who else do we have out there? Francesca, how are you doing?
Hey, doing well. How are you?
Fantastic. Where are you joining us from today?
Toronto, Ontario.
Such a beautiful place, isn't it?
Love it here. I mean, right about now it's cold and snowy, but yeah, otherwise pretty good.
Cold and snowy is great. Oh my gosh. Good for you. Professor, you're enjoying a little snow out there in Santa Barbara County?
Well, we got a lot of rain, no snow here, thank God. I like to visit the snow, but I don't like to live in it.
The professor always has something profound to say. That's why we call him the professor. Barry, now let me take a whack at this last name. Hold on. Garapedian. Unmute yourself so you can tell me how well I did.
That's perfect.
Oh, good. Hey, Barry, where are you joining us from?
Malibu, California.
Malibu. Nice.
Right on, Barry.
Nice. If Malibu got into a fight with San Luis Obispo, who would win?
Oh gosh, they're both awesome, but it's cold out here right now. It's about 40-something degrees. We're not used to the cold.
Well, I see.
We're both all bundled up.
Okay, you guys are the ones that are bundled up. And Francesca's got snow out. She's wearing a T-shirt. Wow.
I got 44 degrees here, and it got down to 30 before I went to bed last night.
We had 7.5 inches of rain yesterday.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we got 3.8.
Wow.
Well, you Californians, we're going to move the conversation to Australia. You guys kind of bore me a little bit.
Who's here from Australia?
Oh, Dougie from down under. How are you, mate?
Hey.
Good morning, Timmy. Good morning, Russ.
Good to see you,
guys.
mate. So it is, if my calculations are correct, it's 5:25 a.m. in your area, right, Dougie?
Yes, it is.
Always impressive that you show up and you participate. You're ready to go. We like that. So welcome. John a Genius Network member, another one, John Checky, the handsome man. How are you, John?
I'm testing out to see if this microphone actually works, Timothy. Can you hear me at all, or every other word?
We hear you fine, John.
Well, it must have been yesterday, another Zoom conference. I just came from a Bible class, so congratulations. You're in much holier company than you would have been an hour ago.
We're happy about that. It's always good to see you.
Good to see you, and I look forward to seeing you in February if you're still there.
Oh, my God. I'm going to be there. The live event, the big event. Are you kidding me? That you know what? We'll talk about that in a second. Robert Gruler, Genius Network member. How are you, Robert? Robert's waiting.
I'm good. Good to see you guys.
Bring down the boom mic. Boom. I like it. All right. So because John Checky brought it up and Robert brought his boom mic down, we've got to give you a boom announcement. So Joe Polish has been on sabbatical all year. Schwa, you've missed him, haven't you? Schwa is not the same without Joe. He, of course, has a remarkable team, so he's able to take a sabbatical for a year. But he's coming out of sabbatical February 11th, 12th, and 13th at a live, 100% live event in Scottsdale, Arizona, at a resort there. Now, we're taking into consideration proper COVID health protocols still, but it's live. So Joey didn't want to wait until November for an annual event. You know, we have those every year. He wants to come out. He wants to hit the ground running. Can you imagine the awesomeness that Joe Polish is going to bring after being on sabbatical for a year? All the things that he's experienced, the things that he's thought and created. He wants to get right back to work. So February 11th, 12th, and 13th, the first all in-person meeting we've done in Genius Network for 2 years. So Genius Network members are going to be there. 100K group members are going to be there. And those who are not Genius Network members, some of you qualify for not being Genius Network members. You can come to the Genius Network annual event. There's an application still, but it's only $10,000 to come to that annual event. Now, I kid a little bit. That's a lot of money. But the thing is, we talk about members come all the time. They talk about getting a 10x return. They talk about connecting with people who can help them take their business to an entirely new level, the collaboration, the contribution that goes on. So those who actually come to the annual event, they pay $10,000. If they want to be in Genius Network for the next year, they just pay the difference. They pay $15,000 more, and then they're in Genius Network for the following year. So it's a great way to get involved. If any of you are interested, there's a website. I'm going to give it to you now. It is geniusnetwork.com/big, because this is big. Now, some of you are saying, oh my gosh, wait, the Super Bowl is February 13th. And this is would you rather spend 2.5 days with Joe Polish or watch the Super Bowl? Well, you can actually do both, because the annual event, the big event, we end about 1 o'clock on the 13th, Arizona time, and the Super Bowl starts 3.5 hours after that. So you can come to the big event. John Checky's going to be there. Robert Gruler's going to be there. Dean Jackson's going to be there. Dr. Patty Ann's going to be there. A bunch of other people are going to be there. And we're going to have a marvelous, remarkable time as Joe comes out of sabbatical. So anyway, that's what we're looking forward to. We're starting in 1 minute. Let's see who else we have out there. Dean, we're happy to see you.
A little technical difficulty getting in, but I'm in.
That happens sometimes.
Mhm.
And Bryce Higgins. Bryce was on camera, then he went over. Oh, Joshua Gold. Oh, my goodness. How are you, Joshua?
Looking forward to this.
Good. This is going to be fantastic. And as a matter of fact, Eunice, it's the bottom of the hour. You give me thumbs up if we're ready to go, or do you want to wait another? Oh, okay. We're going to get started here.
Okay.
Welcome, everybody. I love marketing. On behalf of Joe Polish and Dean Jackson, the co-hosts of this thing, and everybody at Genius Network, we welcome you. And Joe Polish is still on sabbatical. He's going to come back February 11th, 12th, and 13th of 2022. That's the big event, live, 100% in person. You can get more information by going to geniusnetwork.com/big. But anyway, Dean Jackson has done a remarkable job. He's a very talented man of doing these I Love Marketing live events throughout the year. And so they've just been incredible. And you've had remarkable guests, Dean. So I would love to go ahead and introduce your guest for today. And then we'll sit back. We'll take notes after Dean and Dr. Patty Ann have a conversation. They'll open it up for questions. You can post questions in the chat as well. I'll do the best I can at capturing those. And so we'll get to all that we possibly can. But let me go ahead and introduce Dr. Patty Ann Tublin. Now, she is an internationally recognized emotional intelligence, communications, and relationship expert, speaker, author, executive coach, and consultant. As the CEO and founder of Relationship Toolbox LLC, which is a training and development coaching and consulting firm specializing in the development of emotional intelligence and other critical soft skills, she enhances optimal individual and group performance that impacts the bottom line. Now, as a relationship expert, Dr. Patty Ann understands that a company's people are its most important asset. A 2-time best-selling author of, now listen to the titles of these 2 books. First, Money Can Buy You Happiness, Secrets Women Need to Know to Get Paid What They're Worth. And number 2, Not Tonight, Dear, I've Got a Business to Run, both of which received 5-star reviews from Barbara Corcoran of Shark Tank. Now, Dr. Patty Ann is a frequent guest expert on every TV and print platform, including, see if any of these sound familiar to you, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox Business News, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Forbes, Inc., Success Magazine, and Entrepreneurial Women Magazine, to name a few. Now, she was also the 2015 recipient of the prestigious Women's Leadership Award presented in Washington, D.C., along with other dignitaries and thought leaders such as Mrs. Colin Powell. Now, as a professional speaker, Dr. Patty Ann has keynoted in places like London, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, and New York. Her world-class education includes a doctorate in clinical psychology, 2 master's degrees, executive coaching certifications, and she is also an RN. If you were to ask Dr. Patty Ann her most important accomplishment, she will tell you being a happily married mother of 4 children, including a set of identical twins, is what she is most proud of. Dr. Patty Ann this is her first year in Genius Network. She's a remarkable member, always coming to give. And so, Dr. Patty Ann, we really appreciate your being with us today. So, everyone, would you please help me welcome Dean Jackson and Dr. Patty Ann Tublin.
Wow. Intro like that, I can't wait to hear what you have to say. This will be amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
This is great. Well, this has been kind of an interesting fall because we've kind of had a relationship series kind of going here over the fall. And I'm very excited to dig into emotional intelligence. It's one of those things that we hear those words all the time. And, you end up, we were just having a conversation about IQ yesterday. So I'm interested to have the combination conversation there. But before we do, I want to kind of hear the Dr. Patty Ann Tublin story so far, how we ended up with the path that you've kind of taken to get here. How did you become so fascinated by emotional intelligence here that you've kind of, sounds like you've really dedicated your life to it. So
I have. I didn't know you were going to ask that. I'm like, oh, I'm not prepared for that. Well, I've always knew my entire life that I wanted to help people. Truly, truly. I actually wanted to be a medical doctor first. And for different reasons in my personal life, that never came to fruition, but it's all good, right? Because it led me to where I am. So I always knew I wanted to help people. And the Reader's Digest version of how I got here is that I was working, so from my degree, which is just academics, right? So it's just a great baseline, but then you have to have experiential knowledge to go with that. So I always liked that I was able to look at the human performance, human motivation, human behavior from all aspects. The emotional is the psychology, 1 master's is social work, so the social aspect, and 1 master's in nursing, so it's the medical aspect, right? So it's the 3 tripods of the stool, because I don't think anyone in particular can be understood without realizing that there's another component that influences it. They're constantly interacting, interchangeable. Mm-hmm. So I was working as a therapist and as a marriage counselor with an entrepreneur, with him and his wife. And we were working on communication skills and emotional intelligence. Mm-hmm. And the wife said to the entrepreneurial husband, this is exactly what your team needs. And he said, yes, it is. And turned to me and said, can you help us with that? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, so what I did was, that's when I went back and I got more training on coaching, because what I love about coaching, as opposed to psychology and therapy, if you will, is that coaching is a wellness and a health model. Mm-hmm. Psychology is from a pathology model. Mm-hmm. I don't want to deal with pathology. I want to help people move forward. Right. So that was the beginning of my journey. And that was back pretty much when the dinosaurs ruled the world. So it was a long time ago, but it's a great foundation, because what it's done is it's allowed me to build the skills upon each other. So understanding people within a romantic context has helped me understand people within a business partnership, and then also within a business relationship. Because many times when I get brought into a company, if it's not working with the business partners, Dean, it's that somebody else has been brought in because they're not meeting their numbers. And they say, all right, look at the business model. Something must be awry. And the coach will go in and say, or the consultant, the business model's great. It's just they're killing each other. The relationships are toxic and nobody knows how to get along. And that's when I get called in.
You know,
And
we
I
also
love
say about the real estate business, because real estate's a very people-oriented business, but the running joke was always real estate would be great if it wasn't for the people and the paperwork. It would be a great business. And but you just look at it, and one of the things, I'm looking at some of the talking points that you and I could dive right into. And the very first one is why relationships are essential to the success of any business. It's not just real estate that is, or we think about things that tend to be sort of people businesses. You think there are people inherent in every business, whether it's the team in the internal business, the interaction between your clients and customers and potential customers, those relationships, the suppliers, it's all about the people. It
is every single business. Even if you're a tech person in a back room in a dungeon and you never leave your basement, if you have a product or a service to sell, you can't do it without people. So what I love, which I say all the time, is all success is predicated upon the ability to create, nurture, and sustain healthy relationships. So here's what everybody can relate to. I would imagine most of us are entrepreneurs listening now, right? We've probably all watched Shark Tank. If you haven't watched Shark Tank, the basic premise of Shark Tank is that entrepreneurs go into the tank to get money, and just as importantly, the connections, which are the partnerships, which are the strategic relationships that the sharks can provide for the entrepreneur that would otherwise become close to them and offer them opportunities to grow their business. The entire premise of Shark Tank is predicated upon strategic relationships. So there's happiness in the business. We also know that for peak performance, in the book, The Art of Impossible by Steve Kotler, I'm not sure if that's
right.
He talks about, for peak performance, people matter. Because when you're faced with the challenge, the research shows, and I love this now, and I love that we have functional MRIs that can show it, right, for the hardcore science people, but we'll get to that later, maybe, is that if you're faced with the challenge, and everybody can think about this in their personal or professional life, and if you have, I'll just say gross oversimplification, you have a support system behind you that will cheer you on, your odds of being successful are greater than if you don't have people in your corner, right? So there's that aspect. The third aspect, which just is amazing to me, I love this stuff. So we've only started to live later in life recently, right? And sorry, guys, but women tend to live longer than you. There may or may not be a reason for that. I don't know. It could be the luck of the draw. But anyway, men haven't lived as long as women, but men are living into their 70s and 80s. But that's very new news. So Harvard did a longitudinal study of over 700 men, I think 729, don't quote me, but over 700 men for the 79 years of their life. And what they found is that the men that will live the longest and are in fact the happiest are the men that have significant, happy relationships.
Right.
And they could predict that from midlife, like at 50, had nothing to do with blood pressure, cholesterol level, nothing. That to me is incredible. So if that doesn't make the case for all success is based on relationships, I'm at a loss.
Yeah, if you're defining your success as living and being here on the planet to get to play the game longer, that's really Yeah, that's a big.
But also, Dean, but happy.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not just existing, right? And so what's success for me?
Well,
It's
we as entrepreneurs, this is the greatest news, is that, we get to use our business also to create this happy, successful, whatever our definition, we get to define what that is. So a big piece of it is relationships. And you see everything going now, it fits in so perfectly, with this whole idea of the cooperation game that we've all been playing. I mean, that's what makes us as a species the most successful species in the planet, is being able to cooperate with other people so that not everybody has to be self-sustaining with their own little world. We get to create in a bigger system, and that requires cooperation.
well,
So,
it's the personification of who, not how.
yes,
Right?
that's exactly.
I don't have to be the hunter and the gatherer and the cooker and the right. Thank God, because if I was the cooker, you'd all starve. But but it's the classic. If you cannot cooperate, if you cannot collaborate, and companies that do that well, we call that a high functioning team.
Yes.
Right. It's a
Now,
team.
so how do you look at the different levels of relationships? Like, you think about well, let me ask you a question. Some of these will be off our
Bring it on.
I don't think I'm going to stump you. I know you can handle anything. So in this context, we were having a conversation about IQ yesterday, and we were talking, because I saw a thing with Jordan Peterson talking about IQ and the role of IQ in what its purpose is. And my understanding of IQ is that it's basically a set point. It's not something that it's not a skill set that you're going to improve. It's your quotient, your capacity sort of thing, for what it is. But as opposed to EQ, which to me seems like it is much more controllable, that you can skillfully improve your emotional intelligence.
Okay, so
And give yourself
if I may, I'll just correct you a little bit. I wouldn't
Okay,
use.
yeah, I want to be corrected if I'm wrong about IQ. How much can you improve your IQ?
No, it's not correcting as much as just being a little bit more specific.
Perfect.
More accurate.
Yeah.
It's a learnable skill.
Which is?
EQ is a learnable skill. So
understand. Is IQ affectable? Can you effectively raise your IQ? Yeah.
Okay, so look, I can be wrong, but I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Here's what I believe about IQ versus EQ. All right. That's the expression, IQ will get you the position, EQ will keep you and get you promoted. IQ, much of IQ, and this might change because we're learning so much from the brain, right? But right now, as far as we know, IQ is an innate ability.
That's my point. That's right.
And it's within a range, right? So you can affect your IQ plus or minus 10 points within your range. But you're not going to go from 120 to 150, no matter how many tutors you get on the planet.
That's my point. Right. Perfect.
Right?
Yes.
But the problem with IQ, there's a whole history about why that was developed, and it was all very much for conformity and going like the whole educational system. Sit down, do the rules, which is why girls do better in formal education, because girls will sit and boys, girls' stress relief is to talk, boys' stress relief is motion, right? I mean, that's a different conversation as well. So your IQ is relatively fixed, but here's the thing. With all due respect to all of us, most of us can do anything except rocket science and neurosurgery. That's my joke. Okay. Those two need inordinate mental capacity.
The tippy top levels, right?
Yeah, everything else we can more or less learn. I truly, truly believe that. But success, and I saw a quote like this just recently, and I loved it. It said something like, no matter what your IQ is, no matter how many languages you can speak, no matter how many codes you can write, if you do not know how to control your emotions, all of the above, is rendered useless.
Mhm.
So, what is your emotional intelligence? Your emotional intelligence is something that can be learned because it gets developed as we grow, as our brain grows, right? Because our brain isn't completely formed until like 25, which is why when teenagers do stupid things, we say, what were they thinking? Well, they weren't, because their brain's not formed yet. It answers a lot of questions, right, about our
I'm
teenagers.
55 and I'm still hoping that it'll fully.
But
Yeah.
EQ is about understanding how we feel. So gross oversimplification, emotional intelligence is the ability to identify and control our emotions in real time instead of having our emotions control us. Now,
Mhm.
that's only half the definition, but that's all we need because that's the basis for self-awareness. If you do not have self-awareness, nothing else matters. So think about a 2-year-old. A two-year-old has a temper tantrum. Why?
Mhm.
Because they feel something, they have no restraint, and they have no concept on how to control it.
Mhm.
That's what parents are supposed to do.
Mhm.
Parents are supposed to teach children how to recognize, label, because you have to label an emotion to be able to get your arms around it. Otherwise, you don't know what you're trying to control, right? And then to control it so it doesn't control you.
Mhm.
And I don't know how much you want me to go, but that we learn that over time,
Yeah.
right? So we're not so impulsive, and we need to learn to create. I can talk about triggers later, but this is all about triggers too.
So there's so much more that we can actually do with our, in terms of shoring up our or improving and turning our return on, our EQ as a competitive advantage, really.
Which is why it's so great.
Yeah.
You can improve it.
Yeah.
I love that, right? All right. So your IQ. So yeah, listen, by definition, average is average. Most of us are average.
That's
It's
right.
the truth, like it or not. Like,
Yeah.
my son's not a genius because he's average. What can I tell you? But your EQ, you have no excuse for.
Right.
If you want to grow and if you want to develop.
So if we think about it, then, so one of the things, if we think about all the relationships that we have, I've been a big fan of this idea of Robin Dunbar's work on the 150 people. Have you heard about Dunbar's
No, I'm sorry.
number?
If I should have, guilty. I haven't heard.
Well, here's one of the things that we talk about in our after unit of our business. When we, Joe and I talked about the before unit, the during unit, and the after unit, the relationship side of your business, keeping in touch with them. So in real estate and carpet cleaning or any personal business, Robin Dunbar is a evolutionary psychologist, and he talks about this idea of what was coined as Dunbar's number, which is 153. Is kind of the number of people that we have the capacity to have a one-on-one relationship with and manage.
A real relationship.
A real relationship defined by, if I saw you at the grocery store, I would stop, I'd recognize you by name, I'd have a conversation with you, and I know my place in your life, in our world, right? And that was evolved when we started playing the cooperation game, that we had to be able to, for our safety, if we're going to gather in, I hate to use the word tribes, but the groups of 150, that we had to know just by looking in the eyes of everybody that you belong, you're in my tribe. Because if I don't recognize you, you're a threat to everybody, right? So that was how that all developed there. And when tribes would get bigger than 150, they would tend to split off and go and grow to 150 again. So when we look at this, most people really underestimate the value of a small group of relationships in their business, in their world. Like we talk about managing your relationship portfolio. That's how much value we put on that core group of people, your top 150 there. We have a metric that we measure called return on relationship. And our goal is that you should be able to manage that relationship for a 20% annual yield, meaning for our real estate agents, the gold standard is you have 150 people. We should be able to, just by nurturing your relationships with those people, be able to do 30 transactions over the next 12 months. So it's an interesting, I imagine that there's part of this is recognizing the different levels or types of relationships that you have that require a different kind of intelligence when you talk about.
So again, I wasn't familiar with that concept before you shared it with me, so I'll study up on it more, but I'll tell you what I'm feeling and where I'm going with what you're saying. So if you look at a tribe or if you look at a community, the number you said was 153, right? My guess is it starts to splinter after that, because the 123 means that there's a role for everybody, and their uniqueness is not, it doesn't threaten anybody. So everybody can prove, and I mean this in a sincere way, not a narcissistic way. So everybody can prove their worth and their specialness to their tribe. Once you get bigger than this number, I'm assuming, now there's two people that can pretty much be Dean Jackson. Of course, that's impossible because there's only one Dean Jackson in the world, but it would imitate, another person could imitate you. So now there's infighting for Dean Jackson space.
Right, for my,
So
that's interesting.
That's my guess based upon what you're saying. But your point is exactly my point. You know, who's it? Richard Branson said, you take care of your employees and your employees will take care of your customers. Game over.
And that's another focus, right? That's another focus, is taking care of your internal things. I'm starting to see how much richness there is in the different types of relationship categories that we have too. I just want to clarify, Robin Dunbar's number is 150. What I didn't tell you was when they did the numbers on Facebook, that the average number of friends that people who are not like us trying to, that are not like us trying to be influencers or pad that number. The average for real people on Facebook was 153 is what that was. So it's really interesting.
What's that 3 differential there? What's
I don't know. That was just how close.
I know. I'm just curious. That's me. I'm
it was just how close it was. How close it was to what Robin actually said. So it was just kind of an interesting.
I'm going to have to do. Maybe we'll have another conversation when I see you, but I have to look at, numbers have so much significance. That's why in the Bible, there's certain sacred or holy numbers. I'm thinking of Timothy Paulson as I say it, because I'm going to ride his coattail into heaven. But I know there's sacred numbers, right? So I'm wondering what the 150 means. Is it the 1, the 5, and the 0? Like in the Hebrew, there's a number.
I think it really had something to do with what he was describing. Is the size, the capacity of this frontal cortex part of our brain to manage it all. Yeah, exactly.
Frontal cortex. Interesting.
Is what it was. Yeah. So I imagine that in any situation, you've got we all have relationships. It'd be a really interesting exercise to really just lay out all your relations. I don't know many people who have gone through a process of listing out all of the imagining all the people that they know, what kind of relationships they have there. But I imagine that there, in any context, there are probably damaged relationships that we have.
So here's what's interesting to what you just said, and I'm going to take a different perspective, if I may.
Yeah.
There are so many, right? If you think about all the different relationships we have, we can be a romantic partner, we can be a parent, we're a member of a community, we're a member of a spiritual organization, a political affiliation, genius network, right? So many incredible relationships. But the common denominator is you, is us, is me. And wherever you go, there you are. So it is rare for somebody to have one toxic relationship out of 150. Chances are you are bringing that toxicity everywhere. It's the common denominator. So think about somebody that's happy, that brings people together, right? Think about a Joe Polish. He brings people together. He's a connector. Any person that you know that knows Joe Polish, if you ask them to describe him, I would imagine, you said, give me 3 words to describe Joe. Most of them will come up with connector. So there's a consistency in our relationships based upon who we are. Now, to get a little bit further, and I'm not a woo-woo person at all, I'm a scientist, but there's an energy that we bring, and that energy we attract similar people to ourselves. So that's why we care about who our kids hang out with. That's why we care about who we hang out with, because there's a connection there. You become the sum total of the 5 people you hang out with. There's a lot to be said for that. And I don't want to freak you guys out, but we now know that women, so in a college, all girls, when they live together, they all have their periods at the same time.
Was that true across the
Yes,
board?
over time, because there's an energy. It's absolutely fascinating. And that's just a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So we definitely, everything is connected energetically. We get into that rhythm. That's a really, I truly believe that. And even across space and time, there's been a lot of situations where, even just thinking about people can summon them, kind of thing. It's fun.
So to add to what you said earlier about evolutionary, our gut now, that gut, like you're thinking about someone and they call you.
Yeah.
It's the new level of this. And I'm not the expert here, but we're now finding that there's evidence of it's an evolutionary connection, right? Wow. That's why our history, our past is so important. Like, this is not exactly the same, but and of course there's exposure, but musicians have musicians, athletes raise athletes.
Yeah.
But there was something here's what's fascinating about energy and emotional intelligence. And this connects to empathy. If I can go here, Dean.
Okay, of course.
We now know that we can teach people empathy, which is an emotional intelligence skill, right? What we have found, and we don't really understand it, is that motor resonance creates emotional resonance. So when we watch somebody perform an act, or when we watch somebody experience an emotion, our brain gets activated as if we ourselves are performing the act or experiencing the emotion.
I've heard about that, mirror neurons, right? That's
whoa. Right.
Yeah.
So, and we know that. You know why we know that? We watch a play or we watch a movie and we know it's a movie. But we're still crying when they're crying. They're actors, but our brain is experiencing it as it happens to us. So if you want to create empathy, use your imagination for somebody's situation, and it starts that neural pathway connection ever so slightly. So fascinating, right? Fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I took you off on a tangent.
No, but you're right. It's that part of it that you can feel scared in a scary movie when you're watching somebody go through something scary. That's the truth. Yeah, exactly.
And for the motor resonance, Paul O'Neill was one of the first athletes that, we have vivid vision now, right? That would visualize batting before he even picked up a bat. Right. And we now know, picture yourself, envision yourself, because the brain is creating the neural pathway. And you have now we have the vivid vision with Cameron and Jennifer.
I love that. So what do you think would be the most let's say this path here, help me build an arc that we can kind of take here today to kind of get people a real practical understanding, something that we can apply to our skills or to raise our EQ. What would be the best thing that you think we could?
Okay, to raise your emotional
I mean, we could go. I just know you know so much stuff, and I don't want to like have to pigeonhole or go down a path that you think when you might know the best thing that
No, you. Oh, come on, Dean. You're
okay.
You're the master. I'm just taking
Okay.
your lead. You know, I can be an encyclopedia of unimportant information too, right? That's what my family tells me. Unimportant information. Like, who cares, Mom? Okay, so for emotional intelligence, the most and if I'm talking too much, interrupt me.
Not at all.
The most important aspect, I believe, is self-awareness.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's all well and good, but I like to operationalize it, as you said, right? Give me something I can do with it. So how can you increase your emotional, your self-awareness, right? Because many people are running around here having no clue how they impact others. Like, it is amazing. People are clueless, right? So how can you increase your self-awareness? The most important thing you can do is to, I think it's Socrates that said, know thyself, and that means know your triggers. Okay, so let me simplify what your trigger is.
Okay.
So a trigger is a reaction to any real or imagined threat. Now, the imagined threat is really important because we might say something to somebody and they get triggered, and it's not that we were really threatening them, but because of their past and unresolved stuff, they think we're threatening them. So that's a whole other conversation. So the trigger is a reaction to a real or imagined threat that creates a visceral reaction with us. How do you know you're being triggered? Because your body, and this is the mind connection, which is another fascinating thing. Your body tells you you have a reaction. You might get a feeling in your stomach. Your back might hurt. Your heart rate might go. You might get clammy palms. You might get a tight neck. Right?
You're getting
you
signals.
know,
yeah.
Your body doesn't lie. Your body tells you what your body lets you know what your emotions, your mind's repressing.
Yes.
So it's a real or imagined threat, and you have a visceral reaction. So what happens during those moments is the amygdala, which is the most ancient part of the brain, which is what primitive man had, which you'll hear people call it the reptilian part of the brain,
Yes,
right?
Right, exactly.
Ancient. And it's responsible for controlling our emotions. Now, our emotions are actually not in just one place in the brain, but let's just say the amygdala controls our emotions. And when we get triggered, we act primitively because it hijacks the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of our brain that makes us rational, logical, thoughtful. And what happens? We're triggered, and now we act totally irrational, like a lunatic. And all we are doing is being emotional, and we're not thoughtful. So that's when people will say, I don't know what happened to me. I just went off. I don't usually behave like that. Because they were acting primitively because of the brain. So how do you prevent having that happen? And know what your triggers are. So how do you know what your triggers are? Anything that causes a physical reaction. So think about it. And if you don't know, ask anybody that lives with you or works with you, and they will tell you. They will know what triggers you.
They know, okay.
Right? And then what do you do? What do you do? Because forewarned is forearmed. So the more triggers that you have conscious awareness of, the better chances you have to control it.
You can let your triggers trigger something else, right?
They trigger your past, right?
Yeah.
So you breathe, right? We need Jason Campbell now, right? You do a deep breath. And why? You do intent. It's a pause. You pause by breathing. Why? Because to increase your emotional intelligence, to not have your trigger control you, you want to put as much time between the stimulus, the trigger,
Mhm.
and your response.
Mhm.
And that gives you an opportunity to regroup. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, that was Stephen Covey, right? One of the first things was your response ability,
Bingo.
your ability to respond rather than react to
Right.
something. That's the first level there.
Right.
That's
And if
really
you want to continue from Stephen Covey,
Mhm.
let's go to the next way to increase emotional intelligence, which is a part of increasing empathy,
Mhm.
active listening.
Mhm.
So what does that mean?
Mhm.
Right? So I say it's listening with an open heart and an open mind. Well, that's great. How do you operationalize that? Right? So think about it as being fully engaged with your presence. So how do you do that? Most of us listen to find fault with somebody, to interrupt them, to have them hurry up, finish what you're saying so I can talk, or so that I can say the next smart thing, right? That's how most of us listen most of the time.
Right. Yeah.
But if you're actively listening, you're listening with an ear for curiosity.
Right.
Like, I want to hear more. And you're not attached to any outcome.
Right.
And so what happens when you do that? When you do that, people will feel heard. And they will feel that if you don't, you're at least trying to understand them. If you want to develop a healthy relationship with somebody, have them know that you're understanding them.
Mhm.
How many times have we walked away from a conversation and said, I'm not even bothering, they wouldn't even listen to me, in business or in our relationships?
Mhm. Yeah, that's it. And but that's where we kind of then draw that stance where we're saying, well, it's not me, it's them in a lot of cases, right? That's really the thing. How could they be like this? Yeah.
Well, what happens, Dean, is like, guilty as charged here. I like to talk to my husband from the other room. Like, I grew up in Brooklyn, so that was our intercom. We yell from the other room, right? And when you do that, I don't know if he heard me or not, right? So what happens? I told you, no, you didn't. I told you, no, you didn't. And there's no understanding. And then that goes back to the main goal of communication, which we can get to later.
Mhm. I love it. So, okay, I'm going to continue. So on our some of our talking points that we had here,
Okay.
one of the things that it says we can talk about is 3 skills to heal any damaged business relationships.
Okay.
Now,
All right.
that can happen a lot, can't it? I mean, that's the thing.
It happens a lot, like a lot of 80% of my practice, right? Of my clients. So here's what happens. Think about a business relationship with co-founders, right? It pretty much starts off like a marriage, right? You come together, it's lollipops and rainbows. You're going to do this better than everybody else, right? You have the honeymoon phase. You're going to set the world on fire. And then one day you wake up and you realize you can't stand them, right? So, and sometimes you literally wake up and realize you can't stand them because you've been in denial. Also sounds like a marriage, right? Anyway, so what do you have to do when that relationship becomes damaged? You have to reestablish the trust, because without trust, you don't have a relationship. So before we talk about reestablishing trust, let me just tell you what you need to do to establish trust in a relationship. First question I will ask somebody is, well, are you trustworthy? You can't expect somebody to trust you if you're sort of kind of shady, right? So be trustworthy, and then be authentic, be genuine. Most of us can smell a rat a mile away, and be respectful. So those are the keys to developing the trust. When the trust gets broken, this is what we need to do. And people don't like this when I first say this, so just everybody take a breath. Whatever created the distrust or the broken trust, think about, take some personal responsibility for the situation, even if it's only 1%, because it takes 2 to tango. If you think that you're going to be able to mend a relationship and reestablish trust by the other person taking 100% of the blame, you are waiting for Godot.
Mhm.
It just won't happen. Their ego won't allow it. So take some personal responsibility that's real and acknowledge it. That's the first thing. The second thing is use the imagination, like we said earlier with empathy, and put yourself in their shoes
Mhm.
and imagine the situation from their perspective.
Mhm.
But you have to be genuine with it. You have to be authentic. And I even have my clients, no joke, stand in front of a full-length mirror and make the case of your business partner. Here's what happens with that. That's amazing, Dean.
Mhm.
Our brain doesn't know that it's imagination and role play.
Right.
Our brain doesn't know that it's not true. Just like you gotta be careful how you talk to yourself because your brain, and it starts to create a new neural pathway,
Yes.
right? So it ever so slightly shifts your mindset to becoming a little bit more open to reestablishing the relationship.
Right.
And then finally, and I don't know if you heard my 10-minute talk, but consider the possibility that maybe, just maybe, there's more than one truth.
Mm.
Because truth is not objective and it's not a zero-sum game. Because if it is, if I'm completely right, baby,
Yeah.
you're wrong. And we're never going to heal this.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So your truth is based upon your perspective of the situation,
Mhm.
which when a relationship is damaged, is very different,
Mhm.
right? And your life experiences,
Mhm.
which makes it so different. So if you do those three things, that
Mhm.
will start to heal. And that happens in marriages and that happens in business partnerships. And you need all three.
Yeah. It really is interesting, the ability of our minds to role play in our minds without, like, to play
Yeah.
things out. I read, I mentioned Jordan Peterson. He's got his book, 12 Rules for
Mhm.
Living or
Mhm.
Life. And one of the rules that he has is treat yourself like someone you're responsible for helping.
Mhm.
And it was a really interesting thing because it gets you to detach from yourself,
Mhm.
view yourself with empathy, right? And to really, to look kindly on yourself and get yourself the help that you need. But I've been thinking about that from a marketing perspective. We've been thinking about how to take that and transfer that to our prospects, to the people who we're starting a relationship with. We were able to, run ads for books and generate leads and start relationships like that. And again, these are all relationships. That's what I think when you're saying there's so many different flavors, it's the same skills of starting a new relationship.
Don't
Are
tell
you
anybody.
trustworthy? What's that?
Don't tell anybody it's the same skill set.
No,
It's
but
just
it is.
different platforms, of
But it's
course.
that same thing. The same questions is, are you trustworthy? Is what we're really trying to come to. That's why when people are referred, when somebody refers somebody to Genius Network,
Mhm.
it's always comes with a much more elevated
Sure.
trustworthiness because they know the person that's referred to Genius Network. They're coming in now and transferring that trust onto this mutual, onto the community and onto Joe and the people they meet in the context of that. But when you're coming into something new and they're observing from the outside, they're coming from, they were wandering in the desert and they come across this environment of what looks like a fun place. They're coming in, but they don't have any context for what's going on. And so thinking that way of treating your prospects like someone you're responsible for helping flips the switch that primarily the people, I would say, the lower EQ way of thinking about prospects is trying to find the ones that you can sell.
Or giving them what you think they want.
Right. But more
Right.
importantly, focused on what you want, which is you want them to buy rather
Correct.
than you want them to get help.
Exactly.
And that's a lower, I think you could really take the low EQ approach and equate it with the low income approach, being a lot of using low EQ strategies in lead conversion marketing, you're probably not going to have as
I
good
don't
an
know.
outcome.
Yeah, there's a lot of wealthy people that have low EQ because,
Maybe that's true.
But to your point about treating yourself, like, I tell people, don't talk to yourself the way you would never let other people talk to you.
Right.
Right. So
Yeah.
you wouldn't let people call you stupid or dumb. So don't call yourself that. And from a marketing perspective, gosh, Dean, it's absolutely true what you're saying. If you take the emotional intelligence perspective of meet the client where they are, give them what they want, not what you think they want, and know, like, and trust. And you're so right. When you make a referral, like when somebody ever refers me, like even when Cameron referred me to Genius, I felt such a responsibility, like, oh my gosh, like somebody put their trust in me. You cannot blow this. And even when Eunice asked me to do this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I better show up with my A game, because you never want to let somebody down because they put their trust in you. That's sacred. I feel it's sacred.
That's great that Cameron introduced. I didn't know that was the case, and that's one of these things that Cameron's been around for years and years and years, and that's there's that level of multiplying that comes from
Cameron would send me an email with the referral, blah blah blah. Tell me again why you're not in Genius Network.
Right, I got you. I love it. Okay, so let me see here. Let's see what there's so much great stuff that we could do this.
I think we should talk about communication, because I don't know if
Okay.
we touched on that yet.
Let's. There we go. Yep, what the best communicators do to establish deeper and more meaningful connections.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not going rogue on you.
No. And listen, I love, and thanks that we can look at this. Eunice prepares these for me so that we make sure we get exactly the best things that we can get out here. So, because sometimes I get caught up in the moment of the conversations, and we could just go, deeper. I'm very curious about things, so I'm ADD squirrel, and we end up all down the thing, and we're talking about something. So it's nice to have our true north to come back to here.
Great. Well, we have to be trustworthy. We said we're going to deliver something, so we have to deliver, right?
That's right.
So here's what great communicators do, and it's simple but not easy, right? Yeah. So the main goal of all communication is not to persuade, to sell, to convince. It's not. The primary goal, and now think about what I said about establishing the active empathy and active listening. The main goal of all communication, first and foremost, is to establish a connection. Because if you don't have a connection with somebody, your message will fall on deaf ears. And that's what happens when I yell across the room to my husband. He might not be listening to me. I think I told him. I think I got my message across. But it wasn't the connection. And that's why so many times and it creates distrust. You didn't tell me. No, I did. And you're both right. You're both right. So the main goal is to connect first, followed by your message. Now, why? Theodore Roosevelt said, nobody will care about how much you know until they know how much you care. And without a connection, how can you possibly know how much somebody cares? Now, to bring this full circle, Dean, a connection is a prerequisite for establishing empathy, for establishing understanding. And without empathy, you can't have a healthy relationship, and you will never be able to, and very few absolutes in life, but you will never be able to resolve conflict.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that I've been thinking a lot about know you, like you, trust you. We talk about that know, like, trust, right? But when we're saying it, it reads as one thing. Know you, like, trust you. I don't think that people value the incremental step, like to go from not knowing you exist. Like this may be the first time that somebody's ever heard the words Dr. Patty Tublin, that they never, maybe don't know that, right? So to be able to go from, I don't know that, to, okay, now I know that you exist.
Right.
And then we've had this experience of being able to, the more that they get to kind of look at you and, the neurons testing, and Jerry Spence has this great thing about how our psychic tentacles are reaching out, kind of measuring and testing things, and they can detect what he calls the thin clank of the counterfeit, that we're testing on a deeper level for authenticity, and for that is this person the real? Do I like this person? And can I trust this person? And I think you can get to that stage quickly. But it's okay too, I think, to know that you can get to, it doesn't all have to happen instantly either.
Well, so I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth for what you just said. So on the one hand, yes, that first impression, that gut, right? Like, oh, don't ignore your gut, right? That evolutionary history telling you something.
Yeah.
On the one hand. On the other hand, you don't ask someone to get married on the first date.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So it's almost like the Ronald Reagan trust but verify. Yeah. Now, to complicate things, once you think you like somebody, then the conscious bias kicks in. So you're only going to see things you like.
Right.
But people aren't stupid.
Right.
I used to say I'm fooled. When I was younger, I'd say I 90-10. I'd be fooled 10% of the time. As I've gotten older, I think it's 80-20.
Yeah.
Now I'm smart enough to know that I'm fooled 20% of the time. But when I was younger, I didn't realize it. I was too dumb to know.
Yeah.
So go with what your gut tells you. And I am a huge one of eyes are the windows to the soul. Right?
Yes.
Look people in. If someone doesn't look you in the eye, I'm not talking about people on the spectrum and stuff, very respectfully.
Right.
But if you're talking to somebody and they can't look you in the eye, their eyes are shifting, what's that about?
Right, exactly.
Now, it's just a curiosity question, right? I'm not judging. I'm not saying it's game over, but now I actually once had that encounter with the woman, and I said, listen, I'm having a hard time talking to you because you're not looking at me. And she told me, I was raised in a cult, and women were not allowed to look you in the eye when they were spoken to.
Oh my goodness.
So that changed everything.
Wow.
But I had to ask.
Yeah. Right? And most people wouldn't even have the awareness to know that was what the thing was that was seemed unusual. They might not even just be aware that something's off with this, and looking for those cues. Is there things like when you're doing those things, are there simple things that you can do that are going to raise the, I know that smiling is one thing, or making eye contact maybe is the one thing, nodding.
Actually smiling, here's a good one with nonverbal communication. I think when you smile, I can demonstrate this great, right? If you don't see someone's crow's feet, I got a million of them.
Right.
Not a genuine smile.
Really?
So then you're like,
Is it or Botox or something?
Well, just listen to any politician talk.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's funny. I love it. Well, let's do this. I know we've had some people in the chat asking maybe chiming in. I've been kind of seeing it in my periphery here. Tim, have we got some questions that maybe we can make sure that we cover as well?
Yes, there are a couple. So I'll read. There's one from CK Lynn. How do we go from self-emotional awareness to better connecting with VIP prospects?
Okay, it's the same answer to connecting with anybody else.
Okay.
Okay. Did you guys just hear that?
Yeah, but I think
Does it
we can
matter?
keep going. Yeah, I don't know why that stopped, but keep
Okay.
going.
Okay. Read the question again. I'm sorry, I distracted myself when that came
Okay,
up.
how do we go from self-emotional awareness to better connecting with VIP prospects?
Okay, so not so much better connecting, but connecting more deeply. All right, and I know it's a nuanced difference, but there's a difference. What I would say is the value of self-awareness is that when you understand your emotions, that puts you in the prime position to be able to understand others, right? So if you can reach for understanding where they're coming from. So here's an example from empathy, all right? Empathy is the ability to understand someone from a feeling perspective, even if you haven't experienced that situation. So I've never lost a child, thank you, God. But if you're empathic towards someone who lost a child, they will feel that from you. And that will create the connection. It will deepen the connection, which is different than sympathy or feeling sorry for them. So I would go with understanding your emotions allows you to then be able to read others accurately because your stuff is not getting in the way and you're not confusing your anger perhaps with theirs or name any other emotion. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Schwa, a frequent caller to this program. He asked, your body tells you what emotions you have been suppressing. How do you tune into your body to reveal these suppressed emotions and deal with them more effectively?
Great question. Okay, easy. Meditation, deep breathing. Here's what's so great. And the West is finally catching up with the East. Only within the last, since the AMA came along, right? Maybe 100 years. Did you ever hear people refer to mind and body as if they're two? Right? The base of this, the base of the brain is attached to the top of the spinal cord. They're constantly going back and forth. And the mind logic can allow us to be in denial, to fool ourselves. The body does not lie. So if we think we're doing great and we have an ulcer, I got a news flash for you. You ain't doing as great as you think. You're just in denial. And that's just one very, very simple example. So if you get in touch with your body and you're aware of where you feel, all right. So we talked about controlling our emotions, but before we can control our emotions, what I do with clients is you actually, there's an expression when you're going through hell, what do? You keep on going. You have to actually go into the emotion, into it, just like a muscle, right? You have to go into it. You have to massage it. And then counterintuitively, it dissipates. It releases its energy. So get in touch with your body and that will help you. Hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you, Dr. Pennian. I have a comment and would love to get you to elaborate a little bit more. I noted something you said that really went to my heart. It resonated with me. Everything you said, but what in particular?
Okay.
So I'm in an educational program at Emory University in Atlanta, and there's 30 others in my cohort. They are pastors of different denominations. Okay, so it's not like 30 people from the same denomination. It's a it's a doctor of ministry program. So we're all there, as leaders in churches. And I love it, Dr. Patty, and I love the fact that there's 30 different perspectives.
Mhm.
You said this: listen with an ear of curiosity. You don't be attached to an outcome. And I kind of picture being in this situation with my cohort. If I went in and I wasn't listening with an ear of curiosity, wanting to get their perspective, wanting to understand more from where they're coming from, what they believe, why they believe, which I appreciate. And if I was already attached to an outcome, this experience wouldn't be nearly what it is for me, which is wonderful. But I love that. Is there any shine you want to add to that concept?
So full disclosure, Timothy and I had spoken about this in Phoenix, and we had an awesome conversation. You probably don't even remember, right? I thought it was a great conversation.
It was so good.
It was so interesting. I think the only thing I can add, and this is where religion is fascinating, because this is, now, when someone believes a truth in religion, it is a truth. But if you think about all the other ministers there, it's subjective. It's based upon your life experience and your perspective, right? So the only thing I would add to what you just said is, if you look at the exercise and the education that you're going through, as I actually have experienced what you've told me as you're seeking enlightenment.
Yeah, I like that.
And enlightenment means so much of what we're learning today is we have to unlearn so that we can learn. Right? Because if we don't unlearn, we're attached to the outcome. And enlightenment, it never means you're wrong. It just means you're growing and you're evolving. And that's why I find religion so fascinating, because who can say who's right? Let's have the debate. Let's have the conversation. It's fascinating. Mm-hmm. And people are, not only are they cognitively smart about it, they can quote Bible verse, right? But they're passionate about it. So when you marry cognitive with emotion, it's awesome. And Timothy, I have to say this, and I can't believe I didn't say this earlier, and I feel badly. That's what empathy is supposed to do. It's supposed to touch your heart. So to answer the other person's question about the deeper relationship, touch their heart. Communicate, make a connection, touch the heart. You'll know it when someone's done it.
What I'm finding is the more I learn about what others believe, their perspective, the more I understand what I believe, what my perspective is. So I like don't be attached to a particular outcome. I love that. Thank you. There's a couple more questions here from, let's see here. Ivan, Ivan's out there. Ivan said something kind of funny earlier. Ivan Gonick, are you there?
I am, Timothy.
So here's Ivan. I don't know if you know, Dean, do you know Ivan? He's actually starting an I Love Marketing
That's
meetup
what I hear. I know
South Carolina.
Yes.
This guy's gonna be like the guy in South Carolina. First of all, give us a detail or two about that, Ivan. And then you wrote something earlier. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've known Joe for a few years now, and he's consistently asked me, when are you going to start your meetup where you're at? And I'm not there yet. But we are expanding offices, and we moved into a new state. And I said, all right, I got some breathing room now. Let's do it. And I'll do it here in my hometown of Greenville, South Carolina. So our first meetup is going to be January 12th at 6 p.m. So if you guys are in the South Carolina area and the upstate area and want to swing by,
I love that.
You guys.
So that's an entirely in-person meetup. Is that right, Ivan?
Correct. I'm debating webcasting it, but I want to see how the first one goes. So
yeah.
Right? In person is a smaller audience before it's out on the internet and everyone can see it.
Well, Ivan, good for you. Congratulations for taking that step. That's terrific. Now, Ivan's in our ELF coaching program, by the way.
Oh, nice. Professor,
you probably recognize Ivan. He's a very smart guy. So anyway, Ivan, did you have a question or a comment?
Oh, it's kind of a comment going back to what was being discussed. It reminds me what you were saying, Doctor, about the discussion in front of a mirror. I remember as a kid, I'd read, nonfiction books, but I'd read them out loud, and I was there. Like I could see and smell almost sometimes, and it just, just immersed in that world. And I think that as children, we have that innate ability, and I think maybe we lose it through conditioning, or maybe we'd call it deconditioning of our natural self as adults. But it kind of struck me because I was like, I remember when I was younger, and I'd read a nonfiction book, and I was there. I mean, I remember reading Hardy Boys, and I literally felt like I was
Right.
on a boat when they were, riding a boat or something like that.
The Hardy Boy Mysteries. Yes.
Yeah.
That's funny.
That's great. That's because we're taught to devalue our emotion and to let logic and the rational reign supreme, right? So logic is supposed to rule the day, and don't be emotional. That's what happens.
Yeah.
I got 3 dogs. I'm emotional.
Ivan, what's your business that you're running in Greenville?
Solar industry. So I started the company in Phoenix, and so we've expanded, and now we are Veteran Solar South Carolina here. Okay. And the goal is to open up Georgia and North Carolina here in the next 2 quarters. So
Nice.
we're licensed there. We're just not ready to open there yet.
Right, I got it. Yeah, very good. For anybody on the meetup here, meetups are an amazing tool to get to know people in your community, to really get surrounded. When we first started the I Love Marketing podcast, it's over 10 years ago now. We were kind of taken by the number of people that were starting meetup groups at one point at the I would say in 2012, 13, something like that. We had meetup groups all over the world that were meeting, in groups to talk all about marketing. And what a great anchor relationship building tool if you have a business that you want to grow by meeting other entrepreneurs. What better way than to get to know these entrepreneurs by bringing value, getting together in a group to help everybody, the rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing. So having this opportunity to kind of take the lead to do relationship building by hosting an I Love Marketing meetup group. Do we have a link still on I Love Marketing about starting meetup groups, Gina or Tim?
There is.
Yeah.
ilovemarketing.com/meetups. I'll drop it in the chat.
There we go. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very cool, Dean.
Yeah, for a couple of years, I was running one right here in Winter Haven, where before the pandemic, and it was just fun to get and be around local businesses to see what kind of things local business owners were getting into, and building great relationships that way. So lots of fun there.
Very cool. I have a couple more questions.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Patty Ann and Dean. So are habits tied into emotions? And if so, how long does it take to change an emotional habit?
Can I get a line on BJ Fogg?
Good. Tiny habits.
What was that game? Can I get a line? Well,
that was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And it's like,
is that what it was? Yeah. Sure, habits are emotion. Because read the whole question again? I'm sorry.
Our habits, let's first of all start with, are habits tied into emotions?
All right, that's easy, yes.
Okay. And then, so how long does it take to change an emotional habit?
Oh, an emotion. Oh, okay. See, okay. Never mind, DJ. I got it. An emotional habit, I'm going to interpret as patterns, right? So you want to know how long it takes to change a pattern, an emotional pattern. which is a little bit different than a habit, I think. They're probably cousins. It depends upon the motivation for the pattern. It depends upon how long it's been established. It depends upon, at the risk of using psychobabble, how long the unresolved conflict is there and what it represents. And some patterns serve us well and we don't want to change them. And other patterns we want to sublimate to something different. I don't know if this is a great analogy, but for people that have patterns, say someone that ate too much or drank too much, okay, an oral need pattern. When that sometimes gets managed, it's a little bit of a game of whack-a-mole. The need is still there and it reappears, and the person might become addicted to running, but that's a healthy pattern and a healthy addiction. So I don't think I'm doing a great job. Maybe Dean, you can answer it better, but it really depends upon what the pattern is, what purpose it's serving for the person. And if they want to change it, why do they want to change it? Do they want to change it? Or does somebody in their life want them to change it? Does their boss want them to change it? Does their partner? So I don't mean to skirt the question, but it's not, it's
no, but there's so many layers to it, right? And that's what you're saying. If you're thinking about I think all habits are behavioral habits or emotionally behavioral habits, right? That it's all connected. There's this mind-body connection, like you're saying. The body's not doing stuff without any kind of thing.
Permission from the mind, right?
Exactly, right, exactly. And so the good news is, I think what you were saying, part of emotional intelligence is knowing when there's how to seek out the right solution for things, feels like. And what BJ Fogg has dedicated his life to, making habit changes, tiny habits that you can lead to bigger outcomes. That's having that awareness is an emotional intelligence that has a big
think it's important to know what it's serving.
Yeah.
Like, what emotional need is the physical habit serving?
Yes.
And that's the piece that has to be untangled. And I do think that that's like BJ's brilliance. Right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things that I've always been enamored by this whole question, because I think that a lot of people are labeled with this imagine if you applied yourself kind of situation, right? Like, that seems like such trite words that we keep hearing, but there's something to it.
Didn't you have a kindergarten teacher who said that about you, Dean?
Well, listen, this was the amalgam of I found all of my report cards when my mom passed in 2013. I found this box with all the old report cards, and the summary, the handwritten summary, was that Dean is able to achieve excellent results with what seems like little effort. Imagine if he applied himself. That was the
oh my goodness.
I mean, it's so funny. It's like, I thought right away, if I was ever going to write a memoir, that would be my life memoir right there. Yeah, imagine if I applied myself.
Dean, I think it's great, because basically, even back then, you knew to work smarter, not harder. So
exactly. Yes. Isn't that funny though? But that's, it's kind of been a funny thing. We've been, joking that I came up, there may be a loophole in the separating of yourself and making it 2 words, yourself. There may be something, there's a hidden loophole there. Imagine if you applied your self, and we got to figure out what this self is, but that's something,
That's good.
Always looking for the loopholes, Tim.
I like the loophole.
Yeah,
I like it. Okay, Andy, we have a few more minutes. So Andy Ash asked this question: what spiritual disciplines, if any, do you use or have that influence your relationships or connections?
Oh, that must be for Dean.
The Buddha, the marketing Buddha.
Is that for me?
I think that's for either one of you. What
All right,
spiritual disciplines, if any, do you use?
Okay, so I'll be totally honest. I struggle, you know this, Tim. I struggle with the spiritual formality of religion. I definitely believe in a higher power. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what I call it. There's something greater than ourselves. And honestly, as I get older, I'm finding myself literally becoming more and more in touch with that. But I used to say that I'm an agnostic until the plane starts shaking, and then I'm praying with the best of them.
That's right.
I find it fascinating, this whole, like, you must see so many different people, Timothy, in your program, that you're people from different, and I always find it curious, very curious about the things that, what is not sort of remarkable or different is someone who grew up in a Muslim country, who is a devout Muslim and is following that path to the highest level, or a young man from Utah following that path to the highest levels too. What's really fascinating to me is would almost be the opposite of that someone from a Muslim background or from another thing that has sort of, I had sort of conversations with this with my mom, that because we had a cousin who was sort of starting to go into Buddhism, and she was very like thinking, oh, how could he go so far astray? You know, like wasn't our like, you know, Christian back, you know, story sort of thing on the thing that's an unusual thing for someone from this, from our family to go down that path. And I said to my mom, I said, you've got to understand that it felt like you, to my mom, would, if you were born in a Muslim country or in a Buddhist country, you would be the best Buddhist that you could be, because you're the equivalent of that here in the way you grew up. You absorbed that, you took that on, but you didn't go and investigate all of the possibilities and land on this one as the true source. It's just kind of, it's a fascinating like backdrop to look at the way people make choices. You know?
Yeah, very good. What spiritual disciplines you use to have influenced your relationship or connections? You know, for me, if I may add,
well, you're the most qualified among us.
I don't know if that's the case at all, but for me, just personal experience, when I look at people, so I've done a lot of pastoral counseling. I've led congregations before. There's crisis, there's difficulty, you know, and in business, you know, for 40 years, you know, you meet a lot of people. I think it's a spiritual discipline to look at people as who they are, their potential. I look at them as children of God. So when I look at Schwa, and I say, now Schwa is out there, he's a child of God, that affects the way that I feel about Schwa and my relationship or my connection with Schwa. So it's like, where did we come from? Why are we here? Where are we going? But that's a simple thing. I could go on for hours, but I just want to add that when we look at people that way, it kind of changes. We become more patient. There's more emotional intelligence. There's more kindness. There's more love, and I think that those are key to having a good connections. So that's what I would add.
It's fascinating. There's so much depth to this whole topic.
Yeah, we could go deep on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have time for one more question?
Okay.
And
then we do want to make sure that we give Dr. Patty a chance to tell people where we can start and go down this path because I think it's such a fruitful one.
So let's do this question, and then Dean, you can take it from there with Dr. Patty Ann. That's great. So Suki Tublin, I said that perfectly, I'm sure.
Yeah, sure you
Because
did.
I'm an empath. I tend to leave myself the very last and get great satisfaction from others' success. I want my success. What would you recommend to work on? That's kind of deep.
I think I'll say something first because you may be able to amplify this, Dr. Patty Ann. That sounds like one of the things that Jordan Peterson was talking about when he says, treat yourself like someone you're responsible for. That we're often it's so easy for us to want the best and to give the most to help others, but to not afford ourselves that same level of what we're capable of for others. Do you think that's maybe what he's saying there? That sounds like that would be how that advice may be deployed in a situation like this.
I think it's when you're emotionally intelligent, right? You come from a place of abundance. So somebody else's success, you basking that, like you're as happy for them as you would be for yourself. But the mistake a lot of women make, I would say, is that they're the last on their list and they never get to the last on their list. So make sure, you can't pour from an empty cup. So just be careful that you're not sacrificing your potential for the potential of others, because it's also a gift for people that respect you and care about you and love you to see you succeed, right? The people that care about me, the people love me, they love my success as I love theirs. So it's not a zero-sum game. If that's helpful, just make sure you're not falling into the trap of being a little bit of a martyr. Just be careful with that.
That's it. I love it. Well, this has been fascinating. I love everything about our conversation here. I think we had a great, I think it's very valuable, the things that we've started the dialogue about here. Where would be a good spot for people to start if they want to go learn more about you and more about what your suggestions for us would be if we want to go deeper in
Okay. So great. Thank you. I didn't even think about that. And thank you so much for the opportunity. I really hope this was valuable. I really am passionate about this stuff because to me, it really is all about people.
Yeah.
But I think people can link in with me. And what I'm really excited about is I will be starting a mastermind for entrepreneurs in committed relationships, but I haven't rolled that out yet. But I just started my podcast.
Nice.
So I would love for people to subscribe to my podcast, and it's called The Trust Doctor.
Okay.
Enriching Significant Relationships in Your Life. So be on the lookout for that.
Okay.
And I'll be around. I'm all over social media. Just Timothy knows how to find me.
Perfect. Well, that's awesome. And then this is our last I Love Marketing meetup group for the year. Christmas is right around the corner. We'll be back in January with our first. Now, Joe is officially going to be back in February, right? Is that
February 11th is the first time we're going to see him. Yes.
okay? Perfect. So February 11th is the first time we're going to see Joe. So that means it'll be me in January. I think what would be a really good idea. I haven't talked with Eunice about who or what we have as a topic yet. I don't know that we're locked in. If we're not locked in, I think it would be good to do a marketing sprint podcast to start the year to get everything ready to go out the gate here. So I'll run that by Eunice and see what we can if that's okay. And then the event. We're going to have an event to welcome back Joe in February. What were the dates of this?
11th, 12th, and 13th. That's the Genius Network big event.
The Genius Network big event. And wouldn't it be great if we had geniusnetworkbigevent.com? Is that possible? Or do
geniusnetwork.com/big.
geniusnetwork.com /
Or, Gina keeps putting in there, Joe Polish Returns.
Okay. There we go.
.com. Genius.
I love it.
JoePolishReturns.com.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, guys, thank you so much to everybody. Thank you, Dr. Patty Ann. That was so great. Timothy, thank you so much for your wonderful hosting and sharing with us. And everybody, wishing you the best over the holidays. Have a wonderful, restful time. Thank you to the whole Genius Network I Love Marketing team for putting all of this on. And let's look forward to another big slate of I Love Marketing meetups next year. Have a great time. We'll talk to you in the new year. Bye.